The house was large and quiet, with the kind of silence that made everything feel heavy. It wasn't peaceful silence. It was a silence that made your heart race, a silence that made you feel like something was wrong, but you didn't know what. Mara, the young maid, moved quietly through the grand house, dusting the furniture and cleaning the windows. She was tired, tired from the long days, tired from the heavy weight she carried in her heart, and tired of the secret she couldn't tell anyone. Her uniform was too big, and it hung off her thin frame. She wrapped her arms around herself as if trying to keep warm, but it wasn't the cold air making her shiver. It was something deeper, something inside her, something she didn't know how to explain. Every day felt the same. She would wake up before the sun and work until the moon came out. No one really noticed her. They passed her by, never asking how she felt, never stopping to see if she needed help. She was invisible, but there was one thing Mara couldn't hide: a life growing inside her, a secret that was getting harder to keep, and a truth that was starting to show in the way she moved, the way her body felt. She was pregnant. And the father? Leonard, the young man who lived in the mansion, the son of the woman who owned it all. She didn't want to think about that night. The night when everything had changed. When she had been too tired, too lost, and he had been too drunk. One mistake, one careless moment, and everything became more complicated than she could ever explain. She pressed her hand lightly against her stomach. Every time the baby moved, a part of her wanted to cry, but she didn't. Crying had never solved anything. Her mother had told her that when she was young. Crying won't fix it, her mother had said. And Mara had believed her. She would go through this alone. She would keep the secret. Because that was what she was supposed to do. Be invisible. Do the work. Keep quiet. Never cause trouble. But lately, it was getting harder. She couldn't hide the changes in her body. She couldn't hide the truth. Not from herself, and certainly not from the woman who owned this house. Evelyn Blackwood. Evelyn was sharp, cold, powerful. She was the kind of woman who built an empire from the ground up, with no help, no mercy. Mara had seen Evelyn's eyes more than once. Eyes that looked right through her, as if she was nothing more than a shadow. But shadows had weight too, and Mara felt that weight every day. Mara. Evelyn's voice cut through the silence like a knife, making Mara jump. She didn't turn around. She just stood there, still, trying not to breathe too loudly. Yes, Ma, Mara said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. Evelyn stepped closer, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. She stood behind Mara, her eyes scanning the girl's thin frame, the loose uniform, and the way Mara held her stomach as if trying to hide it. You're gaining weight, Evelyn said coldly. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, one that made Mara's heart race. I'm fine, Ma. Just tired, Mara replied quickly, trying to keep her voice steady. Evelyn didn't say anything for a moment, just stared at her. Her face didn't show any emotion, but Mara knew better than to think that meant she was safe. Evelyn wasn't the type of woman who let things go unnoticed. Come to my study after lunch, Evelyn said sharply before turning away, her voice cold and final. Mara's heart sank. She didn't know what Evelyn wanted, but she knew it wasn't going to be good. She didn't have a choice. She had to go. She had to face whatever was coming. And she couldn't run anymore. At lunch, Mara tried to eat, but the food didn't taste right. She could feel her stomach churning, not because of the food, but because of what was about to happen. What would Evelyn say? What would she do? Would she find out? Would she throw her out? Would she take the baby away? Everything felt too big, too much, too heavy. When she finally walked to Evelyn's study, her legs felt like they might give way under her. She stood outside the door for a moment, her heart pounding. She didn't know what would happen next, but she had to face it. She knocked once, softly, then entered when Evelyn called her name. Sit, Evelyn ordered, not looking up from her papers. Her voice was calm, controlled, as if nothing in the world could touch her. Mara sat down, her hands trembling in her lap. The room felt cold, the silence thick and heavy. You know why you're here? Evelyn asked without looking up. Mara swallowed, feeling like her throat was closing up. Yes, Ma, she whispered. Evelyn looked up then, her sharp eyes meeting Mara's. You've put my family in danger. Do you understand that? Mara's heart stopped for a moment. Danger? How? She hadn't done anything wrong. It wasn't her fault. But she couldn't say that. Not to Evelyn. I'm sorry, Ma. I didn't mean to cause any trouble, Mara said quickly, her voice shaking. Evelyn's gaze didn't soften. She stood up, walking slowly to her desk. "You are poor," she said. "You have nothing. No family. No protection. But I can change that. I can give you something." Mara's eyes widened. What did Evelyn mean? What was she offering? Evelyn took a deep breath, her face hardening as she spoke. "Take this money," she said, sliding a thick envelope across the desk. "Leave this house. Leave this country. Start over. Forget about all of this. The baby. Leonard. Forget about us." Mara froze. This was it. Evelyn was giving her a way out. A way to escape. But at what cost? The baby. She had to protect the baby. But could she really leave everything behind? Evelyn's voice broke through her thoughts. "You will leave with nothing. No job. No protection. Nothing. If you refuse, you will be nothing. But if you take this money, you will disappear. You will never have to see any of us again." Mara didn't know what to do. She thought of the baby, the child growing inside her, the tiny life she had promised to protect. She thought of how she had lived, how she had worked, how she had sacrificed everything to keep this secret. But now it seemed like her only choice was to walk away. But could she? Could she really erase her past and leave everything she knew behind? Evelyn watched her, waiting, calculating, her eyes cold and sharp. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in on Mara. Mara looked down at the envelope, her hands shaking as she reached for it. She didn't know what was right anymore. She didn't know what to do. But she couldn't stay here. She couldn't keep living like this. She stood up, slowly, her heart heavy. She couldn't erase her past, but maybe, just maybe, she could start over. Evelyn's voice rang out one last time. "Think carefully, Mara. This is your only chance." Mara didn't answer. She just nodded quietly, turned, and walked out of the room. Her steps were slow, heavy, but each one took her closer to the decision she had to make. And as she walked down the long hallway, she realized one thing. She wasn't just walking away from Evelyn's empire. She was walking away from everything that had kept her invisible. She was walking towards the unknown, but for the first time, she felt like she might just survive. The days passed slowly for Mara. The weight of the decision hung over her like a storm cloud, too heavy to ignore, but too hard to face. She had left Evelyn's study that day with the thick envelope of money in her hands, but she hadn't opened it. She hadn't even looked inside. Every time she tried to sleep, all she could see were the walls of the mansion, the cold, polished walls that had watched over her for years. She remembered the way she had looked at herself in the mirror, her tired eyes, her shrinking figure. She had always been so small in that house. But now, with the envelope in her hands, she felt something new, something stronger than fear, something she had never allowed herself to feel before. Freedom. Freedom from the mansion. Freedom from Evelyn's control. Freedom from the past that had defined her life for so long. But there was a price to pay for that freedom, and it was a price that would follow her wherever she went. She stood by the window in her small room that night, staring out into the dark. She could hear the soft hum of the city outside, but it felt so far away, so unreachable. Her thoughts kept returning to the baby growing inside her. How could she make the right choice? How could she protect her child when she didn't even know where she was going? The money Evelyn had offered her was enough to start over, enough to live comfortably, to leave all of this behind. It seemed like the perfect solution. But then the thought of leaving everything, her past, her memories, her child's future, felt like a betrayal. What was she supposed to do? Her eyes drifted down to the envelope again. It was still sealed, untouched. She knew that the moment she opened it, everything would change. She could walk away, but would she ever be able to forget what she had left behind? Mara's fingers trembled as she reached for the envelope. She slowly slid it open, pulling out the money inside. There was more than enough to start fresh, to never look back. But as her fingers brushed against the cold bills, something inside her twisted. She wasn't just holding money. She was holding a choice. A choice to walk away from the life she had known. A choice that would mean leaving behind the world she had been trapped in for so long. Would it be enough to escape the past? To forget the mistakes? To let go of everything? She didn't know. She sat on the edge of her bed, holding the money in her lap, trying to make sense of it all. She had lived through so much already. She had fought so hard to stay invisible, to stay quiet, to keep the secret buried deep inside her. And now, in this room, she had the chance to walk away from it all, to start over, to build something new. But could she really let go of everything? Could she erase the past just like Evelyn had asked? Mara looked down at the money again, then slowly stood up. She felt the weight of it pressing against her chest, heavy but necessary. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew that the choice was hers. She didn't have to stay invisible anymore. She didn't have to live in the shadows of Evelyn's empire. But leaving would mean starting over with nothing. No family, no home, no one to rely on. She felt the tears welling up again, but she didn't let them fall. She had cried enough. The time for tears was over. She had made her choice. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy, but it was hers. The next morning, she stood at the front gates of the mansion, her bag packed, the envelope in her hand. She took a deep breath, looking back one last time. For a moment, she thought about turning around, about going back inside, about staying in the safety of the mansion, the world that had always been so cold and so full of fear. But then she looked at the envelope again. This was her chance, her only chance. She didn't look back as she stepped out into the cold morning air. Her heart was heavy, but there was a spark of hope inside her. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew that she was leaving the life that had tried to erase her, and with every step she took, she felt a little bit more free. Before we continue, don't forget to comment where you are watching from and subscribe to this channel to support our growth, because this story is just getting started. Mara's steps were steady, her mind racing with thoughts she couldn't quite organize. The world outside the mansion was quieter than she expected. She had left behind the heavy gates of wealth and control, but now she faced something else, the unknown. She had walked away from everything, her past, the family that had kept her locked in, the empire built on lies. The weight of the decision didn't hit her until she stood on the sidewalk, staring at the city around her. The streets felt different. The cars, the people, the buildings, they all seemed so far away now, like she had never truly belonged to any of it. But her children, had to come first. No matter what, she had to protect them. Mara pulled her coat tighter around herself, clutching the envelope of money in her hand. The cold morning air bit at her skin, but she didn't care. She had nothing left to go back to. No family, no safety net. But she had her strength, and that was something no one could take away. The city felt big, too big. She had no plan, no place to go. But there was something inside her, something fierce and protective, that told her she would make it. She had survived so much already. This, too, she could survive. Her first stop was the nearest bus station. She had no particular destination in mind, but the idea of leaving the city behind, of escaping the world that had tried to trap her, was a thought that kept her moving. The bus was full of strangers, faces she didn't know, lives she'd never be a part of. But to her, that was the beginning of freedom. She sat by the window, her gaze lost in the passing streets. She thought of the mansion, of Evelyn's cold face, of Leonard's careless words. She thought of the moments in the house when she had felt small, invisible, and worthless. But now, that life seemed so far away. She wasn't a maid anymore. She was a mother, and that made all the difference. The bus ride took hours. It felt like time had slowed down, like the world outside was holding its breath as Mara tried to figure out what to do next. She couldn't stop thinking about her children, the ones growing inside her, the ones she had promised to protect. Would they be safe? Would she be able to provide for them? Would they ever have a life where they weren't running from something? When the bus finally pulled into the station, Mara stepped off, her feet dragging against the pavement. She didn't know where to go, but she knew she couldn't go back. Not now. She was free, but that freedom felt heavy. The money she carried wasn't just a way out. It was a reminder of how much she had sacrificed, of how much she had lost. Her stomach growled, reminding her of how hungry she was. It had been days since she had eaten properly, but she pushed the thought aside. She couldn't afford to be weak now, not with everything she had ahead of her. Mara found a small diner and sat at the counter. The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes, didn't ask any questions. She just took Mara's order and brought her a cup of coffee. As Mara sipped it slowly, she thought about everything she had left behind. She thought about her family, the life she could have had, and the child she had to protect. The door to the diner opened, and a man walked in. He was tall, with dark hair and a sharp, serious look. He didn't pay much attention to anyone as he sat down a few seats down from Mara. His face was tense, like he was carrying something heavy. Mara felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She didn't know why, but something about him felt different. He didn't belong here. There was something in the way he moved, like he was used to being in control, used to getting what he wanted. The waitress brought him his coffee, and Mara overheard a few words that made her pause. The man's voice was low, but she could hear him ask, "Have you heard anything about a woman named Mara? She left town a few days ago." The question sent a chill down Mara's spine. How did he know her name? Who was he? She turned her head just slightly, trying to catch a glimpse of his face. But he wasn't looking at her. He was looking down at the newspaper in front of him, but there was a sharpness to his gaze. He wasn't just asking about anyone. He was asking about her. Mara's heart started to race. Had Evelyn sent someone after her? Had Leonard already found out she was gone? The thought made her stomach turn. But she couldn't let herself be seen. She couldn't let anyone know who she was or why she was here. Not yet. Not until she had answers. Not until she knew what she was up against. The man took a long sip of his coffee, his eyes scanning the newspaper. He didn't look like he had any idea Mara was even there, but she knew he was looking for something. Maybe someone. Mara stood up quickly, her hands shaking as she grabbed her bag. She needed to get out. She needed to keep moving. As she walked to the door, her mind raced. What had she just overheard? Who was he? And why was he looking for her? She didn't know the answers, but she knew one thing. She wasn't safe. Not yet. The world outside Mara's new life was chaotic, but for the first time, she felt like she was in control. The days blended together in a quiet rhythm, one where survival mattered more than comfort. Her new apartment was small but warm, the smell of homemade food filling the corners of the room. The children, though young, felt the difference. They had been given the gift of peace, something Mara had not realized they needed until she saw them laughing and playing freely, without fear. Still, there was something inside her that wouldn't let her rest. The past. She couldn't escape it entirely, could she? The memory of the mansion, of Evelyn's cold face, and of Leonard's indifference followed her like a shadow. She could not shake the feeling that she was still being hunted by the secrets they thought they had buried. Mara often found herself wondering what Evelyn was doing, if she was thinking about her, or about the life she had tried to erase. Would Evelyn ever change? Would Leonard? But Mara knew that was no longer her concern. She had her own life to live, and for the first time, it felt like she was in control of her own future. One evening, as she sat with her sons at the small dinner table, laughter echoed through the apartment. The sound was foreign, yet comforting. Her sons were growing fast, smart, strong, and full of life. They were the future, the legacy she was building, and that thought filled her with a deep sense of purpose. But even in this new life, the weight of the past wouldn't let go. Back at the mansion, Evelyn sat in the quiet of her study, the weight of her decisions pressing down on her. The walls of her empire, built with years of ambition, control, and calculated moves, seemed to be closing in on her. Everything had begun to unravel since Mara's return. The world outside had caught wind of the truth, and her empire was trembling under the pressure of the scandal. The press, the shareholders, the board, they were all asking questions she couldn't answer. Leonard, too, had changed. He walked through the mansion with the same cold demeanor, but there was something different in his eyes, a flicker of doubt that hadn't been there before. For the first time, Evelyn wasn't sure if the world she had built would survive. The phone calls came in waves, each one more demanding than the last. "We need answers, Evelyn. How do you explain this? Your son, your legacy, what now?" She had spent decades building this life. Everything she had worked for was at risk. But in the midst of all the pressure, one thought kept pushing its way to the surface. Mara. Evelyn's heart clenched at the thought of her. The girl she had once tried to erase. The girl who had returned with a strength that Evelyn had never expected. In her study, Evelyn sat still, her thoughts swirling. She thought of how she had treated Mara, how she had used money to silence her, to push her out of the family. She thought of the children Mara had protected, the children she had tried to erase. What had she done? She was staring into the abyss now, her empire slipping through her fingers, and for the first time, Evelyn felt the weight of her actions, the price she had paid for all the control and power. Evelyn picked up her phone and dialed a number she never thought she would call. Mara had just finished putting her sons to bed when her phone rang. It was an unknown number. She hesitated for a moment. Could it be Evelyn? Could it be Leonard? Her heart beat faster at the thought, but she answered anyway. "Mara." It was Evelyn's voice. Cold, calculating, but with a hint of something softer beneath the surface. "Mara, I need to speak with you. We need to discuss things. It's time." Mara's breath caught in her throat. What did Evelyn want now? Why was she calling after all these years of silence? I don't have anything to say to you, Mara replied, her voice firm. She had made her decision. She didn't know Evelyn anything. But Evelyn wasn't done. You're right. You don't owe me anything. But I do owe you something. And I think you deserve to know the truth. Mara's heart skipped a beat. The truth? I'm not interested in your money, Mara replied, her voice hard. I've learned enough from you. Money. It's not about money, Mara. Not anymore. Evelyn's voice faltered for just a moment. I was wrong. About everything. I've made mistakes. And now, I need to make it right. I need you to come back. I need to make amends. Mara sat there, frozen. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Evelyn Blackwood, asking for forgiveness? Why now? Mara asked, her voice quieter, more curious than before. After everything you did? After everything you tried to take from me? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Evelyn spoke, her voice softening, almost vulnerable. Because I see now what I lost, what I could have had, and it's too late to fix the past. But I need to try. Mara swallowed hard, her mind racing. What was Evelyn really offering? What did she expect from her now? I don't know what you want, Evelyn, Mara said finally, her words quiet but firm. But I'm not coming back. I've built a life for myself and my children. You can't undo what's been done. Evelyn's voice grew firm again. I know, but I need to tell you something important. You and your children, you deserve to know the truth. The whole truth. And I can't let it stay hidden any longer. Mara's heart pounded in her chest. What was she really saying? What had Evelyn been hiding all these years? I'll come to you. I'll tell you everything. But only if you agree to meet me, Evelyn said, almost pleading. Mara stared at the phone for a long time, her mind reeling. The truth? What could it be? Her silence was all Evelyn needed to hear. Think about it, Mara. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to make things right. For once, just a chance. Mara let out a shaky breath. She knew she couldn't stay hidden forever. And whatever Evelyn had to say, it had to come out. The next morning, Mara found herself standing in front of a cafe in the heart of the city, the phone still fresh in her mind. Evelyn's words echoed in her ears. I need you to come back. I need to make amends. You deserve to know the truth. What could Evelyn possibly want to tell her? What truth could be hidden so deep that it was worth calling her all these years later? Mara had spent the night turning the conversation over and over in her mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Why now? Why after all this time, when the world had already moved on from their past? The more she thought about it, the more unsettled she felt. The truth. Evelyn had said that word like it could fix everything. But Mara didn't know if she could trust it. Trust had been shattered a long time ago. Her trust had been stolen by the people who were supposed to protect her, and Evelyn, despite whatever regret she claimed to have, was the last person Mara wanted to listen to. But as much as she told herself to walk away, as much as she wanted to pretend none of this mattered anymore, her feet carried her toward the meeting place. The truth couldn't be avoided forever. When Mara arrived at the cafe, the atmosphere was different from what she had expected. It was quieter than usual, the kind of place where the hum of whispered conversations could drown out your thoughts. She scanned the room, looking for Evelyn. And there she was, sitting at the corner table, hands folded neatly on a napkin. The sharp, controlled woman Mara had known seemed softer, almost vulnerable. Her eyes didn't have the same coldness they once held, but something deeper, a kind of guilt, perhaps, lingered. Mara hesitated before walking over. Every step felt like a weight dragging her down. She couldn't forget the past. She couldn't forget how Evelyn had treated her like nothing, how the empire had been built on silence, lies, and power. Evelyn looked up as Mara approached. Her eyes seemed to soften for a moment, but only for a moment. The mask was still there, but it wasn't as tightly held as it used to be. You came, Evelyn said quietly, almost as if surprised. I wasn't sure you would. Mara nodded but didn't sit immediately. She stood across from her, the distance between them thick with the years of hurt and anger. I'm here, Mara said simply. But I don't know what you expect from me. Evelyn took a deep breath, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. She looked down for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts, before meeting Mara's gaze. I never meant for it to go this far, Evelyn began, her voice uncharacteristically shaky. I never meant to hurt you, or your children. But in trying to protect my family, in trying to protect the empire, I lost sight of what really mattered. I lost sight of you. Mara's heart clenched. She wanted to believe her. But the memories were too fresh, the wounds still too raw. Protect your empire? Mara asked, her voice low. You tried to erase me, Evelyn. You tried to erase my children. You thought money could buy us away. You thought power could make everything go away. Evelyn's eyes filled with something Mara hadn't seen before. Regret. Real regret. The kind that made her voice falter. I was wrong, she whispered. I can't change what I did, but I can tell you everything now. I can tell you what happened. I can tell you why I did what I did. Mara shook her head. And why would I believe you now? After everything. Evelyn's voice trembled as she spoke. Because the truth has been eating me alive for years, Mara. I need you to know that what I did wasn't about you, not really. It was about my fear of losing everything. I thought if I silenced you, if I erased the mistake Leonard made, I could protect us all. But I was wrong. I should have protected you. I should have protected your children. Mara's chest tightened. She could feel the walls in her heart start to crack. The words were slowly getting through, but she still couldn't bring herself to trust them completely. And what about Leonard? Mara asked, her voice tight. What about him? Does he know about any of this? Or did you just let him get away with it all? Evelyn's gaze dropped. Leonard doesn't understand. He never understood what he had done, what it meant. I tried to protect him, to shield him from the consequences. I didn't want him to lose his place in the world. Mara felt a sudden burst of anger. So you let me and my children suffer for his mistakes? You let us disappear for him? Evelyn's eyes flickered with shame, but she didn't look away. I never meant for any of this to happen. I never wanted you to suffer. But my own fear of losing everything, of losing him, made me blind to what was really happening. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air was thick with everything unsaid. Evelyn's confession was raw, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. I need more than apologies, Evelyn, Mara said finally, her voice firm. I need the truth. All of it. No more hiding. Evelyn nodded slowly. You're right. And I'll give it to you. I'll tell you everything. The whole truth. Before they could continue, the door to the cafe opened with a quiet chime. Evelyn and Mara both turned toward the sound, and Mara's stomach dropped. A man walked in, tall, with a sharp suit and an air of confidence. His presence seemed to fill the room immediately. He wasn't anyone Mara recognized, but the look in his eyes, dark and calculating, sent a chill down her spine. He stopped at the door, his gaze sweeping over the room. When his eyes landed on Mara and Evelyn, they narrowed. I thought I'd find you here, the man said, his voice smooth, but with a tone that made Mara uneasy. Evelyn's face turned pale. She quickly stood up, as if trying to shield herself from whatever was coming. Mara, this is someone I never thought I would have to deal with again. Please, sit down. But Mara wasn't sure she could stay. She wasn't sure what this man's presence meant, but one thing was clear. Evelyn had more to hide than she was letting on. The man stood at the door, his dark eyes fixed on Evelyn and Mara with a sharp intensity that made the air in the cafe feel even thicker. His presence was impossible to ignore. Mara's instincts kicked in. Every fiber of her being told her to run, to leave this place before whatever storm was about to break hit her. But she couldn't. She was already too far in. The past was closing in on her, and this man, this stranger, felt like the final piece of the puzzle. Evelyn stood up quickly, almost too quickly, and stepped toward the man. No, not here, she said, her voice almost pleading. We can discuss this later. But the man wasn't interested in waiting. He stepped forward, his gaze still fixed on Mara, who couldn't look away. There was something dangerous about him, something that made her stomach twist. I'm afraid we don't have the luxury of waiting, he said coolly, his voice carrying an authority that seemed to shake the room. This can't stay buried forever, Evelyn. Evelyn's face went white. She glanced nervously at Mara, who stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. Who is he? Mara asked, her voice trembling slightly, though she was determined to stay calm. There was a time, a few months ago, when she would have kept her mouth shut, when she would have been too afraid to ask. But now she had nothing left to lose. Evelyn didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned back to the man, her face a mask of both fear and determination. This isn't the place, Richard, she said, her voice low. We've been over this. Richard. His name rolled off her tongue with such familiarity that Mara could tell this was no stranger. This was someone close to Evelyn, someone who had been with her through more than just the business deals. There was a history here, one that hadn't been revealed yet. Richard gave a small, almost amused smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. The place doesn't matter anymore, Evelyn. The truth has a way of finding its way to the surface. You can't hide it forever. Mara's pulse raced. The truth? She asked again, her voice firmer now. What truth? What is he talking about? Evelyn hesitated, her eyes darting between Richard and Mara. There was a moment of silence before Evelyn spoke again, her voice quiet but steady. Mara, this is Richard Lawson. He's been involved in some of the decisions I made about you. About everything. Mara's chest tightened. What decisions? What are you talking about? She demanded. Evelyn seemed to crumble under the weight of her own words. She looked away, her face filled with a mixture of guilt and frustration. Richard is the one who helped me make sure you left. He helped me erase you. We had to keep it quiet, keep it contained. We couldn't let the family's name be tarnished. Mara took a step back. The words hit her like a slap. This man who now stood in front of her, had been part of the plan to erase her. To erase her life, her children, everything she had fought for. You. Mara's voice caught in her throat. You paid him to make me disappear? To erase my children? Richard's eyes flickered, and for a brief moment, he looked almost apologetic. But then he quickly masked it with a businesslike expression. It was the only way, Mara. It had to be done. Your presence, your pregnancy, it threatened everything Evelyn had built. And she wasn't going to let that destroy her empire. Mara's world tilted, and for a moment, she wasn't sure if she could stand. She had always known that Evelyn had been ruthless, but hearing it from Richard, someone she had never met, someone who had played such a significant role in her life without her knowing, made everything feel even more surreal. You made me disappear, Mara whispered, tears threatening to spill over. You made me and my children vanish like we were nothing. Evelyn stepped forward, her eyes pleading. Mara, please understand. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want any of this to happen, but you don't understand the pressure I was under. The empire, Leonard, everything was at risk. I had to make the decision. Mara could feel the anger rising inside her, bubbling up like a tidal wave. You had to make the decision, she repeated, her voice shaking with fury. You didn't just make a decision, Evelyn. You destroyed lives. You destroyed my life and the lives of my children. Richard's expression hardened. You don't get it, do you? He said, his voice cold now. The world is built on decisions like that. You can't let emotions cloud judgment. People make sacrifices every day to protect what matters. Evelyn made the choice to protect her family's future. Mara took a deep breath, trying to keep the anger in check. She had to keep her focus. There was more to this. There had to be. And now? Mara asked, her voice low but intense. What happens now? Now that the truth is out? Now that you've come here to tell me everything? Evelyn stood quietly, her eyes filled with regret. I don't expect forgiveness, Mara, she said softly. But I need you to understand. I did what I thought was best. I made mistakes, yes. And now I need to make it right. I'm asking for the chance to do that. Mara looked at Richard. His presence was unsettling, his role in everything even more so. And you? Are you here to help Evelyn make it right, too? Richard didn't respond immediately, but when he did, his voice was cold. I'm here to ensure that things stay under control. You may think you've won, but the real battle is just beginning. Mara's mind raced. What was he talking about? What was this man's role in all of this? Was he here to make sure she didn't ruin Evelyn's carefully constructed world? But the more she looked at him, the more she realized that Evelyn's empire wasn't the only thing at risk. Mara's life, her children's future, had always been in the balance. She had been a pawn in a game much bigger than she ever understood. Control. Mara's voice shook with disbelief. Is that what this is about? Control. Richard stepped forward, his gaze sharp. It's always been about control, Mara. You, of all people, should understand that by now. You've fought for control of your own life. But it's not just about what you want. It's about what the world demands. The words hit Mara harder than she expected. Control. She had been fighting for control over her own destiny, for the safety of her children. But this was different. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about something much larger. The room was silent. The weight of the moment pressed heavily on everyone's shoulders. Evelyn sat across from Mara, her face pale and fragile, a stark contrast to the strong woman she once was. Richard stood by the window, his arms crossed, watching the two women as the truth, the ugly, raw truth, unfolded between them. Mara's heart was heavy. She had fought so long to get here, to find the strength to break free from the chains of the past. But now that the truth had been laid bare, she wasn't sure what came next. Evelyn had admitted her mistakes, her wrongdoings. But could anything ever truly make up for the years of suffering? Could they ever heal the wounds that had been caused by the empire of lies? The quiet was suffocating, but it was also necessary. The room felt like the eye of the storm, calm yet charged with everything that had happened and everything that was yet to come. Evelyn spoke first, her voice barely above a whisper. Mara, I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I've spent my whole life trying to control everything, trying to protect my family, protect my name. And in doing so, I lost everything that mattered. I lost you, and I lost my own peace of mind. Mara's eyes were steady. She wasn't sure if she could forgive Evelyn. Not yet. But she could see the raw vulnerability in Evelyn's face. And for the first time, she didn't just see the cold, calculating woman who had dismissed her as a maid. She saw a mother, a woman who had been so afraid of losing her empire that she had destroyed the very thing she had worked for. I can't fix what I've done, Evelyn continued, her voice shaking. But I want to help you now. I want to make things right. Not for me, but for you and for your children. Mara's heart tightened. For years, she had carried the weight of the past. She had fought to protect her children from the lies, from the betrayal. But here, in this moment, with Evelyn standing before her, something inside her shifted. Maybe, just maybe, this was the first step toward healing, for both of them. You can't fix everything, Evelyn, Mara said softly. But you can start by being honest, by accepting the truth of what you did. And maybe that's enough to start. There was a long silence, and for the first time, Evelyn looked at her with something more than guilt. It was understanding, a recognition of how much she had wronged Mara. And for the first time in a long while, Evelyn felt the weight of her empire begin to lift, not through control, but through acceptance. I've spent my whole life building walls, Evelyn said, her voice low. And now, I realize that the only way to truly protect my family is to break them down. Mara nodded, her heart heavy but full of a new kind of understanding. She had carried the pain of the past for so long, but now, it seemed like the beginning of a new chapter. Not just for her, but for Evelyn too. The path to redemption wasn't easy, and it would take time, but it was a start. And then, unexpectedly, Richard spoke, his voice soft but firm. I think it's time to let go of the past, Evelyn. You fought so hard to control everything. But this isn't something you can control. You have to let it go. Evelyn's gaze shifted to Richard, and for a moment, she looked almost lost. She had always been the one in control, the one making the decisions. But now, standing before Mara, she saw that control didn't matter anymore. The only thing that mattered was the truth. Mara stood up, her voice steady and calm. I don't need your money. I don't need your empire. What I need is the truth. What my children need is to know that they're not mistakes. They need to know that they matter, that they are loved. Evelyn stood as well, her shoulders slumped, her hands trembling slightly. You've always mattered, Mara. And your children, they will never be erased again. For a moment, the room was still. The silence felt different now, filled with the weight of everything that had been said, everything that had been admitted. The walls that had been built up for so long, walls of fear, of pride, of regret, had begun to crumble, and in their place, something new was growing. The door to the cafe opened with a soft chime, and Mara turned toward it. She wasn't sure what she expected, but the figure standing there was familiar. It was her son, the eldest, the one who had asked Evelyn the question that had changed everything. He walked in slowly, his gaze flicking to Evelyn and then to Mara. His eyes, so much like hers, were steady and calm. He didn't speak, but his presence was enough. Mara's heart swelled with pride. This was what she had fought for. This was why she had made the sacrifices, why she had endured the pain. For this moment, for this family, her family. Evelyn turned to look at him, her face softening. She didn't need to say anything. The truth was finally in the air, and there was no more need for words. The past couldn't be undone, but the future could be rewritten. Mara reached for her son's hand, her heart filled with both gratitude and sorrow. They had made it through the storm. Together. We're not done yet, she said softly, her voice strong. But we will be. Together. The truth had been spoken, and the weight of it was heavy, but it was also freeing. Evelyn had made her choice. She had faced the consequences of her actions, and now she had a chance to make things right. The empire, once built on control and fear, was no longer her focus. The family, her family, was what mattered now. And as for Mara, her journey had only just begun. She had fought for her children, for the truth, and for a life free from the chains of the past. Now, she could finally look ahead. The mansion was still grand, but it no longer defined them. The walls had been torn down, and in their place, something new had been built. A family, a future, and that, Mara realized, was worth more than anything the world could offer. Not the wealth or the empire that defines a person's worth. It's the love and truth that bind families together. Forgiveness, redemption, and facing the truth are the first steps toward healing. No matter how broken the past may seem, it's never too late to rebuild, to forgive, and to start anew. The past doesn't define us. Our choices and the love we offer do. As we come to the end of this incredible journey, the story we have experienced reminds us all of the strength that lies in the truth and the importance of kindness, forgiveness, and redemption. No matter how far we've fallen, no matter the weight of our past mistakes, we always have the power to choose again. In life, we often carry heavy burdens, regrets, guilt, hurt, and the scars of decisions made. But as we've seen in this story, it's never too late to face the truth and ask for forgiveness, not just from others, but from ourselves. The true strength isn't in control or in hiding the truth. It's in facing our mistakes, owning them, and making things right, no matter how hard it may be. Mara's journey from pain to healing shows us the power of resilience, the importance of fighting for what's right, and how even the smallest act of kindness can turn the course of someone's life. Evelyn's path to redemption reminds us that there's always room for growth, even for those who have caused harm. It teaches us that forgiveness is a gift, both for the giver and the receiver, and it's through forgiveness that we unlock the healing we all need. This story is not just about the past, it's about moving forward. Life will always present us with challenges, but how we face them, with truth, compassion, and courage, defines who we truly are. No matter what you have been through, no matter what mistakes you have made or what pain you carry, you can always start over. It's not about how many times you fall, but about having the strength to get back up, learn, and keep going. We must stay kind, stay true, and always believe in the goodness of our hearts. Even when things seem impossible, remember, hope is often born from the most unexpected places. So, keep moving forward, trust in your journey, and know that the power to shape your future lies within you. You have the strength to heal, to forgive, and to be the light in your own life. Thank you so much for following this journey. Your support and engagement mean everything to us. I would love to hear from you. What part of the story touched you the most? What moment made you think differently? And where are you watching from? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next chapter in this incredible journey. Stay kind, stay true, keep moving forward.